Hey, strangelings out there. Welcome to the Strange World Observer. I am John. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you like what you hear today and any other day when you watch the other videos. So what is today's video on? Well, are we witnessing a coup? That's a good question. We hear the word. We kind of say yes. We say no. So let's kind of take a look at it. First thing we need to do is define it. That's one of the things that I enjoy doing on this show is when we have a word that we need to define because it's being utilized and it may or may not be used correctly. So today we're looking at, this is from dictionary.com. I've got two sources as always. Dictionary.com, coup, which is actually part of coup d'etat, is when a sudden and decisive, I'll get that word out in a second, a sudden and decisive action in politics, especially one resulting in a change of government illegally or by force. So it has to be the outside party taking over the inside party or taking over the government, either through force or without force. We always hear of military coups, things of that nature, but we're actually seeing something that is not in that vein right now. We're looking at a political one, if we're looking at one at all. And then you end up with Merriam-Webster that actually says that it's a sudden decisive exercise of forces in politics, a force in politics, especially the violent overthrow or alteration of an existing government by a small group. So they go on and also give a second definition about that with respect to what a coup is. So I decided to ask the internet. It's kind of the most dangerous thing to ever do. I was going to look up, and the question was, since it has to be the outside party, is Biden staging a coup? That was my question, and just to show it to you, up at the top you can see the Google symbol. You can see, is Biden staging a coup? And what you run into is a ton of Trump coup news or articles or different kinds of people. Could be blogs, vlogs, all kinds of different things. So what was interesting was, and so I decided I'd go to see how far it would take before it actually hit Biden and the word coup. And we actually have one on page 5. I know I don't show it here, but where it's talking about Judge Gregg, the coming Biden coup, the Hill, which was an article written in July. But I really was more interested in what's going on now. And then we ended up on page 5. I'm sorry, that was like page 4. But page 5, Belarus unrest, so that's another country. And the left is setting the stage for a coup if Trump wins, which was an article written in September. Still, nothing that actually kind of brings us to this moment in time. So keep going through 6. It says what? Trump, Honduran, one written in June about the November coup d'etat, fake news claims Obama coup behind the whatever, and the coming coup, which was written in September. So if there's articles out there being written about this, it's being buried by Google, at least on the Google search. So why not look at the news aspect of it? Let's look up news sources. Donald Trump staging a coup is not staging a coup. Is Donald Trump staging a coup? More dictatorship than democracy. Trump purged the Pentagon. Can Trump actually stage a coup? Can Trump actually stage a coup and stay in office? We have to fight Trump's tin pot coup. Opinion: Trump is staging a show, not a coup. So is President Trump staging a coup or what? Republicans aren't conceding, and Democrats are bringing a knife to a gunfight. That's always wonderful language. But again, we get into this idea that there's nothing written about the out of power party overthrowing the in power party. Okay, so I gave up looking. Because in order for it to be a coup, there's some things that have to happen. One, you have to undermine the integrity of the election. So I thought I'd look at something. Has this question been asked of the candidates? And yes, it was in the first debate.
Will you urge your supporters to stay calm while the vote is counted, and will you pledge not to declare victory until the election is independently certified?
Yes.
So Biden said until it's independently certified, he would not declare victory. So how many states have actually been certified? Well, in this article from CBS, it says President Trump has not yet conceded the presidential election, even though President-elect Joe Biden is projected. He's not actually the president-elect. Let's first get that out of the order. We talked about this in an earlier story, that to be president-elect, you have to have the certification of the election. Now, the news media will project who might be the president-elect, but they do not create the president-elect. They do not stamp their approval on the president-elect. They literally just say, we are projecting this person is going to win the election based on the turnouts. That's what Trump is right now trying to say. Look, there's a lot of hinkiness going on. That I know I'm using that word, not him, but there's a lot of hinkiness going on, and he wants to make sure it is a certified election. You go from there. This is what's interesting, because he is saying, look, until that happens, I'm not conceding the race. And it's his legal right to do that. We've had this happen in history. It's not something that is like never happened before. Matter of fact, we've had it happen in this millennia, in this century, in the last 20 years, actually 20 years ago. And we find that with all of this kind of being pushed by a media that moves toward a Biden administration and undercuts a Trump administration, we actually could, by definition, talk about a coup d'etat, but from the Democrat side. The reason why I can say that with a little bit more confidence is something that does not exist. Biden is presently claiming. Biden is claiming that he has the office of the president-elect. This is not Photoshop. This is what he stands behind and talks by and has surrounding him the entire time. There is no such office. First thing. Second thing is that until it's certified, there is no president-elect. So he is already setting himself out there to be president of the United States. He has usurped the legal process, the constitutional process, because of a news media that has put their stamp of approval on him. That is technically a coup. Now, he's also having conversations with foreign heads of state, which, if I remember correctly, General Mike Flynn actually was investigated because of that. But what's odd about it is Mike Flynn had the conversation once they were already certified as the incoming office. And Biden's having these conversations without being certified as being part of this process. So I'm not saying this is a coup. What I'm saying is that if there is an argument for a coup, it has to be on this side of the argument, not that side. Now, can you turn around and say that Trump is dragging his feet, that he doesn't want to leave office? Sure. What president wants to leave office? You run for re-election, you want to stay in office. I had a conversation on Twitter just a few days ago with a gentleman who was a veteran and said, "Look, I don't want him to throw my voice away." And my point is this, that all that Trump is doing is trying to certify the election, make sure there was very little or no fraud involved, make sure the irregularities are taken into account. My position from the beginning has been that I still think Joe Biden will probably win the election. When you look at the preponderance of evidence, you still have to ask yourself how he wins. I don't know. When you have such a red wave for the under the president aspect, taking over House and Senate and state, you gain quite a few seats. There's a potential of being 214 seats in Congress, up from 190. You end up with a Senate that possibly will stay red. how does that then translate to a Biden victory? I don't know. It's possible. It's highly likely, but it's still possible. And so could Biden still end up being the winner? And I say yes. I think that when it's all said and done, is they're not going to find enough to overturn a lot of this. Now they may overturn one or two states, but is it going to be enough to get him to 270? Probably not. But here's what that does do. You go through, you vet the voting. You throw out all the illegal ballots. You throw out all the questionable, hinky stuff that's going on. And what you come down with, if Biden wins, is one that no one can actually state is illegitimate. And I think that's the stronger argument here, is that this would support, particularly in the GOP, would support the President Biden's administration as much as it would support a Donald Trump administration. So President Trump administration. So we're getting into our new segment for this show called the ID10T, and our winner this week is Breonna Kaler. Not sure exactly certain how to say it. I don't watch her, but I did hear of some things. So what was it that kind of got her this award this week?
President of the United States still has not conceded this race. And if the nation weren't so numb to his antics, it would shake America to its democratic core. And it's...
Well, his antics. Now, she is listed as an American-Australian journalist. I'm asking the same question that I asked earlier with in another show. I don't know where journalists went, because right now everybody is a tabloid person. I mean, it used to only be the National Enquirer that had such sensationalism, but now it's like everybody's got to do it. Everybody has to. If you're a journalist, you have to be out there hyping your side. And sadly, journalists now have a side, and it's a movement that finds people like her that are in the process of letting it all out. So there's another thing she starts talking about.
4 years ago today, President Obama welcomed then President-elect Trump to the White House, a traditional visit to signal the peaceful transition of power. 4 years ago today, then Vice President Biden welcomed his successor, Mike Pence, to the vice presidential residence as part of that peaceful transition of power. 12 years ago today, George W. Bush welcomed President-elect Obama to the Oval, to the White House, as part of the peaceful transition of power.
So she's claiming that historically by the 10th of November, which this is when she reported on this, that the peaceful transition of power has ensued. But here's the problem with that. When did this one take place? See, she talked about Bush bringing Obama in, and she talked about Obama and Biden bringing Trump in. But when was Bush invited to the White House for that peaceful transition of power? Well, if we look at the actual date on this, it was December the 19th. Presently, it is the 13th of November. You still have 16 days until that day occurs. So it's not something that doesn't happen. It's not like, the problem is we have a news media and a population so stuck on social media that has no memory of history beyond 10 years ago. So that's why the press believes that Trump is guilty of everything that happens. Everything in American history is Trump's fault. And you also don't have the recollection. They don't recall. They don't recall what happened beyond 2010. I think there's a problem here because history's not being taught in our schools, evidently, because this happened within the 2000s. December 19, 2000. So this isn't like the last millennia, the last century. It wasn't anything like that. It's within a very recent living memory. So, but the reason the reason I actually brought her up for the ID10T award is because of the next clip But I just found so many of them in here that I just had to share those with you. But the next clip is, next two clips actually, is why I did this.
In the Senate, Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell is refusing to recognize the winner of this race.
President Trump is 100% within his rights to look into allegations of irregularities and weigh his legal options.
So he does have legal rights. Mitch McConnell is saying the legal thing to do. And then she points out the fact that he's actually accepted some winners of Senate races into the Senate, and so that they can be introduced to their new offices, things like that, transition of power there. And a lot of those cases that she's talking about, there is no dispute of those races. So they've been called, a person has conceded, and a person has accepted that victory. We don't have that in the presidential race. Matter of fact, we don't have that in the John James race for Senate in Michigan. We don't have it in the Georgia races at the moment, where anybody has, I mean, although they have started off with their campaigns for the January 5th runoff, there's still a hope that in this hand recount that Purdue will actually hit that magical 50 plus 1 ballot. And so that may or may not happen. We don't know. He's not that far from it. I think he's at the moment he's got like 49.8%. And so we find that what she's talking about here, she is going back to this whole enemies list, and I'll show you this in that proof.
Who are still silent about Biden's win, they're enablers too. And here is the list. We're going to leave this up for a second because it is rather long. But if a GOP senator is not named Romney, Sass, Murkowski, or Collins.
So they're not named Romney, Sass, Murkowski, or Collins. I'm gonna kind of explain something about Republicans and Democrats real quick. Right now, what you have is people who are fearful of the left and the Democratic side, and they're all trying to toe the line. They're trying to toe the line so that they don't get, primaried and this, that, and the other. On the Republican side, there's none of that. Murkowski, Collins, they vote against the Republicans, but they are Republican. There's a wider diversity of thought that would allow people to actually work across the aisles. And Democrats, particularly over the last couple of years, have really cinched it in so that there's not much of that working across the aisle, particularly in the House. So the idea that these senators have not congratulated Biden on an election that he hasn't been certified as winner as, or that Trump hasn't conceded to, should be no surprise to the American people. They are Republicans. The president is Republican. He has not conceded yet. He's in the midst of legal lawsuits and trying to figure out the legal vote that has happened. So there's no reason for them to congratulate Joe Biden. When it comes to Romney, we all know that he is not a fan of the president. We all know that he is not truly a Republican, votes with Democrats more than he does Republicans, but he still wears the moniker Republican. We know why he congratulated Joe Biden. We know why Sass, Murkowski, and Collins congratulated Joe Biden. Because they are Democratic they are Democrats in Republican clothing. We know that because of their voting histories. We know that because it's the only way they can win their elections in their locations. We know that. So for us to really kind of say that, oh, shame on you, you have not welcomed and or congratulated Joe Biden on his presidential election, is really a poor standing in politics and in media. And particularly from a journalist who is now going to join the AOC bandwagon of providing enemy lists. Yes, this is an enemy list. She wants it called out that these senators have not thanked Joe Biden for his wonderful effort to defeat the Donald Trump. Guys, please, seriously, let the process play out. I sit here today to say that I still think Joe Biden's going to end up winning the election. I could be wrong. I could be proven wrong. But I still think he's going to win the election. I think they'll have a more legitimate response if he does. But if this does not happen, and there's questions about the legitimacy of the vote, you're going to end up with a presidency that seems illegitimate from about 70 million people. Are we seeing a coup? Are we witnessing a coup? I think we're witnessing a soft coup. It's been going on for more than just this last couple weeks. But we're seeing one, nonetheless. An orchestrated effort from Democrats, from news media, and everybody that supports that, to have Trump deemed an illegitimate president from 2016 to now, and to deem him as a president who does not want to give up power so much that he is in the midst of a coup. It does no good for a peaceful transition of power. It helps in no way to provide a peaceful transition of power. And all of it all together, what does it do? It riles up people that if this vote happens for some reason to flip toward a Trump presidency, that you are guaranteeing that people will riot in the streets. And I'm claiming it right here that the winner of the ID10T badge this episode, along with anybody like her, will be the ones responsible with the blood on their hands if that happens in the streets. Because that's exactly what they're aiming for. So for the Strange World Observer, I'm John. Remember, if you like what you hear, hit that like button. If you share this on your social media, whether it's Twitter or Parler or Facebook or Mayway or wherever else you're online, share this video with those so that we can start spreading the news. And remember always to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you're notified anytime that we put up new content. You can always contact us at the swoshow@gmail.com to suggest any options for future shows, as well as any comments, concerns, or if you think that I've misspoke, send me that email and we'll sit there and go through it. Outside of that, may the facts be ever in your favor.